Hello friends, welcome. Friends, for a change, I thought of doing a video on finance. Now friends, this is not my core expertise. But friends, I have been working on RBI dataset for a long period of time. So I've been following this sector to get a very good understanding as to what is going on because this is my interest. And the reason I pursue this field because this has got a direct bearing on the expertise that I have, which is on telecom, IT and other technology related matters. Because when a country is to grow, it has to allocate funds. And the funds allocation has to come from certain sources. If you really understand from where the fund is coming and then how much leverage the government has to allocate funds for the vertical that you have expertise in, then you will be able to do a better job to understand that whatever is being spoken out in the public domain is going to be really be executed or it is just a narrative which is going to fizzle out. That is the reason I am very much interested in going into the macroeconomic details of our country. Now, in this direction, friends, today in the morning, when I was going through my normal news browsing, I saw this article about RBI dividend to set a new record. Right? It was published on 14th of April 2025 and it talks about a dividend of 2.5 lakh crores. Now friends, what is this dividend all about? Because even a person who is following finance sometimes will get confused from where this dividend is coming and why the dividend keeps on fluctuating on a yearly basis. Now in this video, friends, we are going to talk about why this dividend is fluctuating and what is the source of this income and why it is important and why sometimes it is more a matter of luck than to do with anything substantial. Means it is not that RBI is doing a great job in order to drive so much amount of dividend. It is depending upon the global factors, right, and the valuation of asset which RBI holds. So that's the insight which I am going to talk about it in this video, and viewers, you will find this video very, very interesting. So let's do the following. I will go to my Excel sheet, and this Excel sheet is pretty important because I keep aggregating these numbers, and these numbers, when you look at from a macro and high level point of view, it kind of gives you a story. So the first thing first, let's understand from where the money is coming to RBI, what are the expenditure items, and how much money that finally goes to the government. Is it under control of RBI or it is a policy decision? How these are going to be managed, especially the surplus payable to the government, which is the last item. So first thing first, let's talk about the income line item, and for that what I have done, I have put 3 years, right? So the income is mainly coming from interest because friends, RBI always has funds with them and they keep investing those funds in different type of instruments all over the globe. They will go and invest in US securities, maybe some other foreign securities, and they will keep earning interest, right? Now these interest gets accumulated and it becomes total income, and you will see that the income in 2021-22 was 1.6 lakh crores, and then it jumped up to 2.35 lakh crores, and in the next year, which is 2023-24, it is 2.75 lakh crores, right? This is the income. Now expenditure mostly is very, very nominal. So, if you see that it is printing of notes, expenditure of remittance of currency, agency charges, these are very nominal. If you add all this expenditure, you will find that these are peanuts compared to what the income is. But there is a very, very important line item which is provisions, and this line item is pretty huge. Now this is provision to the contingency fund. Now friends, this whole discussion is anchored around this contingency fund. Now the need to make a large provision in the contingency fund will directly impact your surplus payable to the government. Why? Because if your provision to the contingency fund is high, then your total expenditure is going to become high, and therefore your available balance is going to become low. Just like it happened in 2021-22 and 2022-23, you can clearly see that the total expenditure went very high and the available balance very low, and therefore surplus to the government became low. So the government did not get much surplus from the government in these 2 years. But in 2023-24, there was a huge surplus of 2.1 lakh crores because the provision in the contingency fund was low, which is 42k crores. 40, you can say 43k crores, right? Now, the key question in this video is why provision in the contingency fund keeps on fluctuating like this. This is the question that we have to answer because everything is boiled down on this provision on CF. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you I'll go straight here and you will see here that I have what you called Excel sheet where you can see that, this is basically extracted from the RBI's annual report. So you'll see that there is a line item called capital, then reserve fund. These are notional items, do not change, right? And then balance in CF, right, is changing over a period of time. Then balance in ADF is called asset development fund. These are also kind of, you will see that only variation is in CF. Asset development fund is also reasonably constant because asset development fund is like making some capital expenditure, like buying computer, infrastructure projects. Largely RBI is all set. It doesn't have to do. So this fund keeps lying, unused. So ADF keeps lying unused. Balance in CF will keep changing depending upon the requirement. Now, if you add all these three, it gives you the ARE, right? And the full form of ARE is, let me tell you, the full form of ARE is available realized equity, right? So that's the full form. So largely ARE is driven by what? Balance in CF, correct? Now, one important consideration is that there is a regulatory requirement that this ARE has to be a certain percentage of the balance sheet. What is balance sheet? I'm going to show you RBI's balance sheet. I keep maintaining this balance sheet in my website. So if you go to my website, I'll just show you. This is the RBI's weekly asset and liability trend and GDP perspective. So if you go here, you'll see this is the, let me just show you this is the value. So you'll see that this balance sheet, liability and asset, that balance sheet has to be balanced. So liability and asset has to balance. So you'll see that this balance sheet, which you see here, which is from FY 15, 16, 17, it has been increasing, and now in FY 26, the value is, the latest value is 74.338 lakh crore because this is a weekly number and I have taken a yearly, scale. So FY 25, end of FY 25, the value was 75.44. So when you have this number, ARE, whatever the ARE number is, this number has to be a certain percentage of the balance sheet. It is important. So 6.5%, typically, it has been set as 6.5% as of 31st March 2024. Now, why it has to be 6.5%, right, is a policy decision, right? And why it is a policy decision? Because of the reason which I am going to explain to you, which is to do with the contingency fund. Now, friends, let me tell you the reason why we have this contingency fund. This contingency fund that you see here is nothing but a shock absorber. Now, friends, what is shock absorber? Let's understand what is shock absorber. So for that, I am going to go again to the RBI's balance sheet because you need to look into RBI's balance sheet to understand this concept, because without this understanding, you will not understand why contingency fund is so important. Now, friends, you will see here, I'll show you that RBI maintains foreign currency asset and the valuation of the foreign currency asset will keep on changing. And then we have got another asset class called gold. Now, depending upon the foreign currency value, right, the value of the foreign currency, this in rupee terms will keep on fluctuating. Similarly, gold will, depending upon the price of gold, these values are going to increase or decrease with time. Now, what happens is that sometimes because of valuation changes, RBI will either make a profit or will make a loss, which is notional in nature in their books. It is not a profit which they realize. It is unrealized profit and losses. Now, friends, why unrealized profit and loss is so important? And why there is a need to keep a contingency fund to absorb these losses? Mainly absorb these losses, right? Why contingency fund is acting like a shock absorber? Now, for example, if you see in FY24, there is a clear that the gold prices did not go up significantly. Similarly, in FY 2023 also, there is an asset gold prices were roughly around 3.75 lakh crores, 4.35 lakh crores, right? Compared to the 70.69 lakh crores. So you'll see that these prices keep on fluctuating. So what happens is that RBI makes losses in these years, and these losses have to be absorbed in the contingency fund. And why there has to be a contingency fund kept to absorb these losses? Because think, if there were no contingency fund and RBI needs money because of any reason whatsoever to pay interest, etc., then it has to liquidate those assets and it will incur a loss. Therefore, to absorb these valuation changes, you need to keep a contingency fund, and as soon as the asset prices bounces back, like it has happened in FY25, 6.65 lakh crores is the price of gold, right? Though they have purchased it, but there is a largely on account of valuation change. Then those contingency versus losses that you have incurred will get reversed. That is where the provisions in the contingency fund will keep on changing, which I showed you here. So here it might have happened that there must have been some losses, and the contingency fund, which has to add up to the ARE, which I showed you here, the ARE here, this is, in order to maintain a certain percentage of the balance sheet, was needed to be supplemented or needed to be replenished. And that is why this number that you see here was increased. Now in this year, which is 23-24, this number was reduced to 42,822 because those losses which got incurred in the earlier year were reversed, because now there is a gain. So contingency fund, which was earlier required to balance out those losses, no longer requires a higher provision because of this number that you see here, which is the percentage of balance sheet can be maintained. So as the provision goes down in the contingency fund, the outflow to the government in surplus dividend goes up. I think, friends, similar situation we are going to see this fiscal year also. Why? Because if you look at very clearly here that the gold prices have increased FY20, because we are talking about the financial year FY25, right? If you look at this article which says that look at this RBI, the FY25, look at this FY25. Now in FY25, you look at the balance sheet, which I am going to show you here in FY25. Where is the balance sheet? You'll find, not this, this one. You'll see that there has been a change in, no longer that liability and asset had increased, but the gold prices have shot up significantly in FY25. Since the gold prices have shot up significantly in FY25, all the losses got reversed, right, in the contingency fund. Therefore, it is quite likely that the dividends can be very high, because your valuation has increased. You don't require a high contingency fund in order to absorb those losses. Your shock absorber need not be that high. That is why your provision that you need to keep for the next year, because we have shown you the 42,820 crores, this provision will be low. Since this provision will be low, though the interest income may not be very high, because you keep a lower provision for contingency fund, your dividend is going to rise to 2.5 lakh crores. That is the simple understanding, friends, about this RBI's dividend to the government. You got it, friends? Why RBI is going to set a new record to the government. Now, let me ask you this question. Is there any control RBI has over the valuation of these assets? They don't have. RBI can make judgment to make investments which are prudent, and they may generate more profit. Still, there are macroeconomic conditions which RBI does not control. So these are more of an outcome of a sheer luck. it has nothing that RBI has done which is so dramatic that the other agencies or other regulators of the world could not have done. Only thing is that RBI has to do a good management of their surpluses so as to earn a higher return. But the macroeconomic condition of the world is beyond its control. The gold prices are beyond its control. So the losses and gains are beyond RBI's control. Therefore, the provision in the contingency fund is more of a cyclic, it may not be a cyclic affair, it depends upon the global macroeconomic condition and the valuation of asset in their balance sheet. Friends, that's all friends I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope that you probably understood. I have tried my level best to kind of give you a very simplified picture of this. Maybe those economists may have a very, very detailed and a nuanced understanding of it. I may not understand those things later. If I have committed any mistake in this explanation, please let me know. I'll correct myself and I'll get enriched by those people who are knowledgeable on this subject, understand from them. So I'll just stop here, friends, and I'll come back with a new video on a new topic next time. Thank you for listening till the end.